Hello, everyone. Now, before we get started, I wanted to let you know that if you want to get the uncut recordings of this podcast, join our Patreon. There, you can not only get exclusive content and take advantage of services such as consultations on your digital content, but also you can support this podcast in helping it grow. Join now at patreon.podbay.com/ANM to be a part of other narrators who took the pledge to keep the stories of history makers like Richard Griffin.
Working in the capacity I do, I advocate for prisons to basically be closed. But I'm not tasked with the responsibility that when somebody is released from prison after we got that prison closed, that I'm gonna help them find affordable housing, I'm gonna help them find employment, I'm gonna help them, find a vehicle, get their license, get into school. Like at that point, hey, I just shut the door to the prison, you figure it out. Gotcha. Doing good work, we can be better at it, right? There's things that we could do differently to help that process be more of an inclusive wraparound service for anybody that's dealing with the trauma of that experience.
The diatribe being told.
So when we went to start the Drunken Retort, there was nothing of its kind in existence.
They wanted it to be interactive and rowdy and fun.
I think it's always fresh, new blood. There's old voices, new voices. There's history here now. I mean, like,
we were looking to truly make a nightlife event, not just an open mic experience, not just a poetry show.
To get people excited about poetry and spreading the word and loud and pack a room out of people that were excited about poetry.
There's not the same individual person that's in the Drunken Retort. There's no cookie cutter people that are just made to come here. And I think that's what makes it dope. It's a community, and it's a community effort as well.
Again, join at patreon.podbean.com/ANM and become a supporter of this podcast so we can keep telling the stories of these history makers. Until next time, enjoy the show and keep making history so that you too will be on this podcast.
I spoke one-on-one with President Trump about this virus pandemic and his administration's response to it. So now what comes next and when you typically the job special the proper way to describe
Excuse me. Now that I have your attention, woohoo! All praises, glory be to the Most High, and let's make history. And class is in session.
Are you listening? Damn. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. My name is History Williams, and this is the Making History Making podcast. And so today I have a person who I consider special, and we were actually in the middle of a conversation at the same time. But this person is special because they are a podcaster, and they're a person that I do watch and I kind of like look up to when it comes to doing this online media content creator game. I want to introduce you, ladies and gentlemen, to Brian Redmond, or should I say like Hefe Jafar, like should I say almost
I like Hefe. That sounds good. Yeah,
I had to give you Hefe. I didn't want to give you I wanted to give a little twist to it.
Yeah, I like that. Hefe.
Most
people were like, oh, you can call me on my Facebook, King Jaffe Jaffa. Whatever you want to do, man. It's all up to you. It's up to you. It's your show, man. Yeah. I'm just a guest.
But Brian, we actually let's go back to the beginning. we technically didn't meet like traditionally. I was working at Sam's Club. I was a cashier there, and you randomly kept coming in there. And one of the things I noticed was your Prince of Zamunda wallet. No, it wasn't that. It was the bad motherfucker wallet.
Right, there you go. Badass motherfucker, boy.
Yeah. So that was a shout to Samuel Jackson off of whatchamacallit? Pulp Fiction. Yeah.
Pulp Fiction, yep.
So I noticed that about you. So like, do you remember that day at all? Like possibly?
Yeah, man. I mean that wallet. It actually I've had that wallet for some years now, and it got tore up. But it was definitely something. When I pulled that wallet out, man, people would always look at it, and very few people would actually remember where it was from. You were actually one of the ones that did.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. It was like, the brother remember what the movie from the movie. All right, that was good. But it was definitely, it's always been a conversation piece, man. Conversation starter or whatever. So, and I like talking to people. So, it definitely served me well.
Well, the reason why luckily enough, I'm I sparingly use this word, but what they call is a cinephile. So I love watching lots and lots of movies. I almost a connoisseur of the film, but more specifically, like I follow people who are underrated, specifically like Samuel Jackson. Like Samuel Jackson, nobody talks about this. This man is constantly working all the time. And I loved it because like you pulled out this wallet, and I want to say Pulp Fiction was the first movie where I had a black dude who was not scared to smack a white person. and then was not like, he was like the highlight of the whole movie. Him and Ving Rhames, like I love those guys like being kind of like badasses in a movie that's about white people. So I love that. And you also had the Prince of Zamunda, and even on your Facebook page, you say you're from Zamunda. If nobody knows what Zamunda is, can you please explain to people what Zamunda is?
Zamunda is the kingdom from where Eddie Murphy in the movie, I was about to say Boomerang. Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm about to say you were way off.
The movie Coming to America. Hey, at least we're gonna Eddie Murphy movie now.
Yeah.
From the movie Coming to America, which is one of my favorite movies. It's not the funniest movie of all time in my opinion, but it's definitely in my top 5. So one of the funniest movies I've ever seen though. But yeah, so I just love the whole fact of how, King Jafar was he was unapologetically royal. He did his thing. He carried himself in just a true king manner. I just really like that. So that was just one of the things I've always loved about the movie besides being hilarious. Just the way that he carried himself, his whole just personification of just doing him, I just truly loved it. So that's why I just kind of adopted that. So when I saw that shirt and I had the opportunity to get the shirt, I didn't even hesitate. I just bought it. So I just love wearing it. And on my Facebook, that's like my middle name. It's Brian Jafar Redmond. That's how I got it on my Facebook. Just something different, something unique. So
I know that you're not Hispanic, man, but I had to put the jefe. I had to put the boss. I had Brian the boss.
I ain't gonna hold you back from doing it. Go ahead.
I had to give you some props on that, man, because you've handled yourself like a boss, especially when I was talking to you before we got started recording was I know that you said that you're not really consider yourself pro-black. I would argue against them. And the only reason why I would argue against it is because of the fact that I listen to your podcast, or I watch your podcast, The Relationship Rehab. And even the stuff that you carry on and you carry out, it's pro-black in a way that I consider you, I call them contemporary liberals. What I mean by that is you're kind of throwback in your blackness. So you're not necessarily the black person who's speaking out Black Lives Matter, but you are the person who's sitting there saying I'm unapologetically myself. I do respect my culture and I love my culture and I love who I am. And you're not going to take that away from me. And so when you say that you're the Prince of Zamunda, there's some Afrocentricity to it. So,
yes, absolutely.
So that's what I mean by pro-black and your aspect of it. Like, you're kind of like Charlamagne the God called adult contemporary hip hop. I would say that you're the contemporary like a contemporary like black liberal. I would say that you're throwback in that way.
I get where you're going. I guess one of my things, I definitely love my blackness, if you will. I embrace who I am. I like who I am, and that whole just idea of me being black it's a thing, but it's not a thing to me. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I'm black, just like and I guess I guess the reason why I say I'm not pro-black is because the generalization of pro-blackness and what a pro-black is, I disagree with the greater majority of that. So it's just like with anything that you know, of course, we all use generalizations and we all identify with certain, you know, groups or whatever the case may be. But when it comes to what people generalize as being pro-black, I believe that just with the way that it is today, I wouldn't identify with that or put myself in that group because of what it is today, essentially. And a lot of the things that they believe and the way that they approach things, I totally disagree. I'm on the complete opposite of that. So that's why I don't say that. But I totally get what you're saying as far as pro-black in the sense of being for black or for us. Yeah, I get that piece of it. But as far as what the general public and how we view it in society, I'm not that. So that's essentially. Yeah, that's what I say.
I think that's why I hold on to more to like the contemporary aspect of it, because like when you walk in like a store, hands down, like the few times that I've seen you had like a wind blazer on. You got a big old earring in your ear, so you got like the old Wesley Snipes like Shaq earrings in your head. You bald-headed, and then like so like I consider that contemporary black, like the 80s, 90s. Like I'm here, like. I mean, I would perfectly cast you in the movie High Learning versus like, like I would take.
I'm with Fudge, and I would be with Fudge, and that's what you said.
Yeah, exactly. I would say that, man. I would say that like you are receiving the book from Ice Cube. Or Malcolm X.
What you're referring to, man? That's my aura. It's like Rick James, like when Dave Chappelle did Rick James, and he talked about Rick James when he saw how Charlie Murphy said when he saw Rick James, he had like an aura, like an orange glow. I got that. I do. I must admit, I have that. When people see me, there is an aura that I have. You know, I get it.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like you wear that, and I can't see a person who's Caucasian or even Hispanic like wear that like you. And but you know, don't get me wrong, I could see Mike Epps back in the cut wearing that shit. So like. Like I can see that. Like Omar Epps, I guess that would be a better person. But like
people have said I look like Omar Epps a lot too.
Exactly.
I get that.
So that's what I said. Like I think that's why I genuinely like you, because of the fact that there's no set of like groupthink with you. A lot of times it's individualism. And that's what you kind of seem to scream out and praise. So like you have even, we were just talking about a little earlier, was another podcast which you say the United Guns of America. So can you tell us about the United Guns of America?
Yeah, absolutely. So, United Guns of America is it's a YouTube channel that I have. You can go check it out at going to YouTube and type in United Guns of America. And pretty much what I did was, because of the fondness that I have for firearms, I am definitely pro 2A. I grew up, you know, in a law enforcement family. My dad was a Chicago police officer for 30 years. And just being around guns and those type of things, I've always had just a fondness of them. So one of the things that I did a little different though with this channel is, yes, I talk about guns, I talk about gun safety. I also talk about police, and I talk about the way that police do their job. I critique shootings, I critique arrests, and all of those type of things. So a lot of times police get it right, and a lot of times police get it wrong. And one of my biggest things that I try to point out on that channel is that one of the biggest misconceptions about police officers is that people think that police are born bad and they just want to be bad people. And I would probably say 95% of the time when police get things wrong, it's bad training. It's lack of training, I should say. It's lack of training. And that's one of the biggest things, because being a police officer, it's a people job. You have to be a people person. You have to have communication skills. And a lot of times you can't pick that up in 6 months, riding around training with your field training officer. You don't pick that up there. And it's like a lot of times, because police officers don't get the proper training, they usually wind up making huge mistakes where people lose their lives, or people get really, get hurt really bad. And a lot of times too, that can not only just be the person that's being arrested or the person that's being involved, it could be an innocent bystander or a civilian or a fellow officer. So I didn't see too much of that, because we see police shooting videos all the time where people get shot and people get killed, and all we do is say they was wrong for that. They shouldn't have did him like that. You'll hear that quite often. But a lot of times, when you don't have the knowledge of how the law works, when you don't have the knowledge of how police law enforcement works, you can see something and not understand it. And I try to be the bridge in that aspect to say, I'm trying to show you what it is from both sides, because I've been on both sides. I've been a certified law enforcement officer, and in my younger years, I've been out in them streets too. So I know a lot about it, and a lot of my friends were in the streets. So I got kind of a balanced view of it. And I just try to call it fair, because a lot of times it's a thing of saying we judge on something because we don't have the correct information. And I try to bring that to the forefront to say, hey, look at it from this perspective, as opposed to just what you see from the media saying that police are just bad and they always messing up and they just shoot black people. They just want to hurt people, because that's not the case.
Well, I guess the hardest thing for me was when it comes to and I'm going to be that person when I say this, but like when I was studying for my degree, my focus was media ecology. So like how social media and online, I would say online digital media, affects us culturally. And my biggest thing that I was looking at was the police shootings and like the advertising that was going behind it. And so like people like, I'm pretty sure that you or other people are like, there was advertising for police shooting. Well, you got to think about it. So like the Colin Kaepernick with the Nike commercial. Well, what is Colin Kaepernick associated with? Kneeling because of the fact of his police shootings and because he wanted to like get quote unquote like rights for black people when it comes to law enforcement. And so there's advertisement in a way for police shooting is that we look at this and we say that like we're going to be the person or to be the change that we believe in, even if it hurts. You know what I mean? So what would you say to a person who argues against that and sit there and say that like there is a culture or there is a background, I guess you would say, or you mean in like police violence? So for example, you look at Grand Rapids. Grand Rapids just got hit with racism about 2017 when they did the study, and they found out that more black people were pulled over and I guess you would say accosted by black people, by police officers than any other race in Grand Rapids. So what would you say about that?
So here's one of the things about it. So when you're talking about the statistics, statistically speaking, especially in urban areas or in major cities where you have a good group of black people, usually most of the time, the blacks in those areas, even though they are the minority as far as the numbers are concerned, they are still committing the most crimes. So when you're talking about saying black people make up 13% of the country, that's usually the general number that people come up with. Mm-hmm. When you look at them, you're talking about 13% of the country, but they're committing half of the crimes, of the violent crimes in the country. That's something to look at. So when you're talking about just the overall proportion of saying, well, who's more likely to commit a crime? The numbers are showing you what that is. Now, there's a myriad of reasons as to why crime is high and to why those people are committing crimes. But nevertheless, there is still the fact of it being these people are committing the most crimes. So when you look at that, you're going to be predisposed to judging, saying, hey, when I look and see, hey, there's a group of white kids over here, and there's a group of Hispanic kids over here, and there's a group of Asian kids over here, and there's a group of black kids over here. Statistically speaking, who's going to commit the most crimes? It would be the black group, then followed by the Hispanic group, then followed by the white group, then followed by the Asian group, right? But that doesn't mean in that moment they are. And here's where the law enforcement training comes in. You need to be able to identify and look at those indicators as to who are the bad guys or potential bad guys in those scenarios. And when you don't have that training, what do? You rely on pretty much the generalization of saying, this group here is more inclined, so I'm going to watch that group more. I'm going to profile that group, which is something that everybody does. Racial profiling, it's a real thing. Yes, people say they shouldn't do it, but you do it every day. It's just judging. Based on the information that I have and what I know, I'm going to assume this. And people will say, well, that's not right, but that's it makes sense and it's logical to do because of what the way we live in society. If I'm standing in my own neighborhood, and I see a group of black people and I see a group of white people, me being a black man, I'm going to assume that my clear and present danger is potentially the black group. Because in my community, who commits the most crime? Black folks. That's just how it is. Now, not to say that they are, and not to say that the white folks couldn't be stealing or doing something too, but in just general information from what I know and being in the environment that I'm in, I know who my bad guys are for the most part. And it's those that look like me as opposed to those who don't. So yes, am I racially profiling now with me being a black person? No, I'm taking the information that I have and I'm using it to make a judgment.
Well, I guess the reason why I would say be careful with information like that is because, and it's not, and I want you to, when I say be careful about that is, it's something that I can relate to myself and relate to anybody else, is that like, I could say be careful when it comes to like, I could Bible thump to you, right? And I would say you could tell me be careful with that because you don't know if you're offending me. Because, for example, if you were saying that I'm truly from Muslim, and you could say, well, I'm also Jewish heritage or I'm right. Muslim or something like that. And the only reason I'm saying be careful with that is because of the fact that there is a history of not recording information for that. So I'm using Grand Rapids closely related to, and I mean, like, for example, Grand Rapids has a history of like when they did hire police officers on minority police officers during the 60s and 70s. And they had those police officers, and those police officers are only allowed to arrest black people. But then white people were only allowed to arrest whites and all the rest of the races, right? So even if a person who was a person of color was working on the force, they could not touch a person who they clearly seen that was doing a crime and that was white. And so, but that's just one.
Wait. How far back are we talking?
I was just talking about the 60s and 70s. I'm not talking about anything. I was just, I'm using that as an example. But going into like the future now, like the Congress had passed this, not a law, but like this I guess you would say, a generalized rule, legislation that said that like everybody, all the police officers have to record when there's a police killing, right? But then it's up to the police officers though to write down the information and record it. And so like you have police violence that's going unrecorded. So like that's technically information that you are receiving. You are receiving information about these police violence, or in your case, like whatever you see, but you're not necessarily getting the full picture. And so I guess go ahead. What you was gonna say?
Well, I was saying, in all fairness, I can say this. Even in when you're talking about in Grand Rapids, in Holland, because my wife is what we would consider light skinned. On her ticket that she's gotten on several occasions, because she drives fast, but on her tickets that she's gotten, they have checked other on her ticket as far as her race is concerned. Yeah. So it's like they know what they're doing. And even I've heard of other people that have been of fair skin or light skin, whatever you want to call it. People that are light skinned, or as we say, light skinned. People that are light skinned, they check other, knowing that they're black or that they identify as black. And most of the time, those officers wouldn't even ask. They would just check it. They wouldn't say, well, ma'am, I'm filling out this ticket. What would you consider yourself, Asian or Hispanic, or Hispanic non-black or white? What would you identify as? They're not giving them that option. They're checking it. And the only reason why they're doing it is to pad the numbers. They are literally skewing the numbers because of just that. And it's like when you're talking about one of the biggest things that I say, because there is corruption in that. There is what we would call BS or whatever you want to call it. I wouldn't say they racist, but I would say that one of the biggest problems that we have in our own communities and in our major cities is that there aren't enough black people becoming the police, because black people demonize the police. We make it the worst thing in the world when a black person becomes the police.
I will agree with that.
You saying that you not black, you blue now.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
You working for the man. You a bootlicker. Yeah. We will demonize that. So when little kids are growing up, they don't want to be police because they are taught that police are bad guys. Well, hell, somebody still got to police your neighborhood. I would rather have somebody policing my neighborhood that's not only looking like me, but from my neighborhood, than I would to have somebody who's not from my neighborhood, who's lived out in the whitest suburb possible.
Like Granville,
and now they would just always
like
want to be the police because their dad was the police, their granddad was the police, and their great-great-granddad were the police. So they come from a lineage of police officers, so they want to be the police. And then, they come into my community, into my hood, my ghetto, to work as a police officer. They're a rookie. They just fresh off their 6 months of FTO, which is field training officer. They just got in, and the only black person that they've had contact with was the one black person they went to high school with and came over to their house a couple of times. What does that do for somebody who's now totally immersed in a all black community, in an all black hood? How is that person supposed to be able to even function on a social level, being completely out of his element? And that's the guy that will shoot the guy who he shouldn't have shot. That's the guy who will hit the guy that he shouldn't have hit, because he doesn't understand the community. He doesn't understand how to relate to the people. So it's like, that's what I meant as far as that policeman being a people job first. That's one of the biggest problems with that. And because we don't put us in the police force, in the police departments, then we are doing a disservice to us. Because if I'm policing my own neighborhood that I grew up in for 30 years or 25 years, whatever the case may be, then I'm going to say, well, man, I know these kids. I've seen these kids. I know that kid's daddy. I know that kid's mama. I know that kid's grandmama. So I know what kind of kid I'm dealing with off the top, as opposed to me trying to get to know somebody. This is my fourth black person I've met.
Well,
totally different.
Yeah, and I guess it's nice that what you're saying. Like, don't get me wrong. I think that makes sense. That makes sense, and it kind of makes it more well-rounded in your thought process. And that's what I say. I'm not one of those people, like, don't get me wrong, I don't fully agree with you, but it makes me respect your opinion even more. And it makes me kind of like look at my perspective, because I have a similar perspective. My dad was a police officer. My aunt was a police officer. At one point in time, I wanted to grow up to be like RoboCop. So, like, I wanted to be like RoboCop. I wanted to be Murphy.
Jason Murphy.
Yeah, Jason Murphy. So, like, I wanted to be like, you know what I mean? My only experience with Detroit was from RoboCop. I expected to be, and it didn't help me when I came here to visit Michigan for the first time before I left, before the storm. When I came here, y'all had like a train system. You guys were collecting cans and bottles and stuff like that. So y'all seemed like y'all was a little bit more advanced than New Orleans at that point in time.
Yeah.
And so, but I admired police officers, and I admired the first responder services. And also I was a person who was in the military. So I had a belief that, like, it was very hard for me to kind of acknowledge, like, for example, Mike Brown, where you had Mike Brown who was constantly walking forward to the police officer, while the guy said, hey, keep your hands up and, like, shoot. You know what I mean? Like, you can say hands up, don't shoot as much as you want, but if a person is still, like, kind of like pursuing you, you're still gonna be kind of afraid. And it's the same thing with but at the same token, I turn that around and then I look at, like, Eric Garner. Like, clearly that was a bad policing situation. So I like the fact that you admit that, like, we as Black people, we demonize the police force in a lot of ways.
When you look at it like this, what did Eric Garner die of over?
He died over cigarettes.
Some loose cigarettes.
Yeah.
He died over some loose cigarettes. So
his life was worth $12.19.
Had those police officers been police officers that grew up in that community, in that neighborhood, knew Eric's auntie, Eric's sisters, Eric's cousins, Eric's mom, if that police officer would have known who he was, like, I went to high school with this dude, or I went to high school with his brother, and he would have known him, those police officers would have approached that situation a totally different way. That's one side. The other side of it is, as far as the bad policing aspect of it, police officers fail to take into totality the circumstances. Okay, so I'm about to arrest this guy over selling CDs and loose cigarettes. All right, fine. He's breaking the law. I want this collar. He going to jail. Okay, great. That's your right. That's your authority. That's the position that you're in. Now, what am I going to do to arrest this big black dude? Well, I'm going to try to, see if he'll just comply. If he don't comply, then I'm going to use my mace, or I'm going to use my pepper spray. If that don't work, I'm going to use my taser. Then I'm going to use... How far are you willing to go as a police officer? Those are the things you have to already have figured out before you say the words, okay, you're under arrest, or put your hands behind your back. You have to know 2 and 3 steps ahead of time what you're going to do. Then if it gets to the point to where you say, well, if this dude don't comply and I tase him, pepper spray him and everything, am I going to shoot him over these cigarettes and CDs? And those police officers weren't trained well enough to know that. And because they were out of their element and out of their community, because if that would have been a white man doing that, number one, the white man probably wouldn't have gave him no feedback and just would be like, all right, man, it's over with. I'm fine. Let's go to jail. But if he would have resisted, it wouldn't have went down that way. He probably could have still wound up dying, but it wouldn't have went down that way. So there's a whole piece to that. And then the other part is, too, why wouldn't Eric just say, you know what? It's squares and CDs. Fuck it. Let me just go ahead and just go now. Let me go ahead and take this L. Let me go to the station. I pay a $500 bond, and I'm out in 24 to 48 hours. Why fight over and resist over loose squares and CDs? So it's like there's all, and that's why I said there's different dynamics and different sides to the story, and there can be fault on all sides. Because at the end of the day, how many times have you seen somebody win a resisting arrest?
No, I think that you're right. You got points.
Yeah,
you got points.
Everybody, the person that resists arrest loses. You could say 99.9% of the time, the person who resists not only loses, but they lose in a bad way. They either wind up getting hurt, going to the hospital, or worst case scenario, they wind up dead. So if that's been going on for at least 50 years, why are we still contesting the arrest? Just like with the guys at the Starbucks, the black guys in Starbucks. Those black guys in Starbucks got paid an undisclosed amount of money. They got some stuff to put together for the community, and all they did was comply with the police. The police were totally wrong. Starbucks was totally wrong, but in the moment, they decided not to hold court and to comply with the police.
But what would you say about
there you go.
What would you say about a situation like, for example, like the Central Park 5 and stuff like that? Like, I guess,
okay.
I'm not saying nothing. I'm not saying that like you're not wrong in a lot of ways. I will say the question. I will say the questionable part. It would be that a white man won't do that, because I've seen white people like wild out on like police officers a lot as well, but they got away with it. But and I don't think that you're saying that. I think, but what I would say is that I think that there's bad policing, just generalized.
Well,
hands out.
I would agree with that point, to say that there are white police officers, there are white people who should have, or had they been black, would have died in a lot of situations.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why they don't is because, number one, some of them just know when to stop. But then you have your crazy ones that push it to the limit, like they Scarface, and the thing that keeps them from being killed is because the police officers identify with that. This guy looks like me. This guy reminds me of my uncle. So I'm less inclined.
It does come from a place of racism, then. I want to say
it comes from a place of familiarity.
Yeah. So you don't call it racism. You call it familiar.
What you're comfortable with.
Okay, gotcha. So
it's familiarity. It's what you're used to. It's what's in your environment. It's what you've been around. If I've grown up around white people my entire life, and I'm white, I'm going to be more inclined to be more considerate of, more partial to that group that I've been exposed to the most, and that I actually am a part of.
Okay, so you're
just like how we have this thing, and then go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, because I was making sure that I was understanding you clearly. So you're not saying that it's coming from a place of racism. You saying that it's coming out of a place of familiarity, but other people will look at it as a place of racism and a discriminatory behavior, at least.
Here's why I would say that. Here's my point to argue that. Have you ever been somewhere where it's just you and another black person that you don't know, and you give the infamous head nod?
Yeah, I give a head nod.
And that black dude does the same exact thing. And that's basically a check-in that you have. Black people do this all the time. Whether we are on the bus, we at an office, we at a conference, we in the movies, whatever the case may be, there's a black person nod that we give each other, especially when we're around or amongst white people, to say, checking in, hey, if something go down, me and you, bro. Is that being racist? Why would I feel the need to check in with another black person just because he's black that I don't know? I don't know this person.
Because it's a place of familiarity. You're familiar with.
Exactly.
So,
I'm familiar. That dude looked like my cousin. He looked like my uncle. I'm familiar with him. So if he go down and I need an assist, I'm going to look for him like, bruh, you got me?
Yeah, the infamous scene from Get Out, you know what I mean? So that's a perfect example of that one. But, I mean, you mean I can't defend that? I can't defend that. Now, with that, before we move on, I have to say what is your? I know we're gonna definitely move on. This is one of those things that kind of grind my gears about the head nod. What is your representation of head nod? Like how? Like the head nod? Like, do you do a certain direction? What's your direction specifically?
It's just a look up or nod. You either look up with the eyes, like, you remember how bro man from the foot flow?
Yeah.
Would give you the nod up.
Yeah.
It's either the nod up or it's the nod down. All it is an acknowledgement or a check-in to, hey, I see you, bro.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah. See, I grew up with good.
Yeah, we have this thing. What I was getting to as far as just familiarity part of it.
Yeah.
Because of a head nod, we now have an expectation for that brother to assist us if anything goes left or goes wrong. We're hoping that this black, if there's a terrorist attack, if a bomb go off, if there's a shooting, an active shooter, I'm expecting out of everybody else I'm around that this brother gonna help me because he's black and I gave him a head nod. That's what we expect. That's just how it is. And what would you call that? Would you call that being racist? Would you call that because what you're doing is you're judging what a person is or what a person will do or your expectations of that person based on their color because you don't know them.
Gotcha. So, all right. I get your defense on familiarity.
I get the person that's going to rob you.
I get your perspective on the familiarity part of it. I definitely get it on that one. I can't sit there and say a full. And
I'll just end it with this. I said all of that on both sides to say this. Most of the time, what we deem as racist, what we deem as racism, what we deem as prejudice, it's more so familiarity, if anything. Racism is taught, absolutely. Racism exists to a degree, but in my opinion, it's a small degree. There is a certain likeness that we have for each other, and it creates a bond. It creates a preference. There's a difference between being racist and having a preference or a biasness. If I'm more biased towards black folks, I like being around black folks more than I like being around white folks. Don't mean that I hate white folks, and it doesn't mean that I want to oppress or hold them back. I just prefer to be over here with them. That's all it is. A preference. If I like ice cream, I like cookies and cream. I like vanilla. Just because I don't like chocolate or strawberry does not make me a flavor racist. It doesn't. It's just my preference. Still ice cream, but I prefer this.
Well, I guess the better word would be, and a lot of people forget about it, is ethnocentrism. More so than anything is that like my culture is better than yours, kind of essentially. So like even though you consider a preference and that stuff like that, it's like you dislike something specifically so much that like you prefer to be in another area. You don't sometimes you do come from a place of bullying, then that becomes a part of more so to play on racism.
Absolutely.
But the ethnocentrism is so I would say your perspective more so is coming from a place of ethnocentrism, not necessarily racism. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. All right. And then I have to. I'm sorry. I'm not going to hammer this in the head. You use that scenario about the guy in a room and the head nod. Mm-hmm. I'm weird about this. If you do the upward head nod and I only known you for about 5 seconds, I can't trust you. That's a lie to me. Because I was always raised that the upward head nod is only for people that you're familiar with. You know them, you love them, you're excited to see them, right? But the downward head nod is like, I still respect you. I know that you're there and you exist. What's up? And that's about it. So like if a person...
I have never heard that. That's my first time hearing that. It was always presented to me like, hey, checking in, bro.
Yeah, like you do the upward head nod when you're familiar with a person, when you know the person. When you do the downward head nod.
If it's somebody that I know, totally different. But I'm just saying, just with the unknown and what you're saying, I'm not even disagreeing with it because like I said, it was just taught to me a little different, but it was still a thing of just saying, I acknowledge you, I see you here.
Yeah,
we might be the only 4 black people here, but we done checked in with each other. So if something go down, we know who to look for. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's what it is. So whether the head nod is up or down, you either checking in with somebody that you familiar with and that you know, or you checking in with somebody or acknowledging somebody that you just like, okay, we look the same.
Yeah, excuse me. And you know the crazy thing is too, another thing I would say this is that, like, I'm glad that you put that out there. And I can only think of black people who do the head nod. I can't think of a scenario where I did that with somebody who's white or anybody else. So like I that's why I say it makes me reflect back. And that's why I say I like about you is the fact that, like, you do a lot of time, you use a lot of stuff where I have to force myself to reflect back. I think it's very easy to argue with you and sit there and say, well, no, you're coming from like you said earlier, a coon, a place of being a coon or a porch monkey. Yep. But it's not that. It sounds genuinely like, nah, like, fucker, like, think about something else. Like, think deeper into this.
Exactly. And that's my whole thing. And just like with and there are a lot of just life lessons that I've just learned. It's like we have to get to a place to where we're exposed to a bunch of different stuff, and that's fine to a degree. But when it comes to what influences us and the choices and the decisions that we make, we have to learn how to think independently. Have your own thoughts, whether they're right or wrong, just like us. We are literally just sitting here having a conversation, different points of view, different perspectives, but we are able to have a conversation and say, I never thought about it like that. I never knew. I learned something today about the head nod. Next time I see a brother, I'm gonna say, now wait, what did Jason say if I nod up? That means that I'm gonna do that because it's like I picked something else up, and it could be something where because I didn't know it, it can change how I relate to something, how I look at something, how I think about something. We need to get to a point to where we're thinking on our own, we're thinking independently, and most importantly, we're thinking about what best serves us on an everyday agenda, day-to-day basis, what best serves us. We have this mentality to where we just want to go along with the status quo, the latest hot word, the latest hot button. It's like, I say this sometimes, I say, you know, African Americans, black folks, whatever you want to call it, we live like The View. We all hot topics. That's all we when it comes to the decision making, we see something, are you racist? Well, how? Are you doing, you a coon? Are you this? Are you that? And it's never a thing to say, well, hey, because I've seen this, because I've heard that, because I know this, and I've researched that, I'm saying this. You very seldomly hear things, especially on social media, where people are saying things that actually say, hey, I'm saying this particular thing about this person or this group because of these 6 or 7 things that I found to be true, these facts. And it gives me it gives me the idea to say, well, because of all of this, I'm going to say that.
Okay. So kind of, we're gonna segue lightly to like one of your shows, which you talked about Joe Biden, and this is more of a recent one. So you did this yesterday, and so So you, I'm gonna read your status, which is they say so Cosby, Kelly. So we reference to Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, Michael Jackson, and Russell Simmons, and even Kobe Bryant. Can get talked about, but the Me Too train refuses to stop at Biden station. Well, here is, and click the link and click the like. So the video is titled "Surviving Joe Biden." Tara Reid speaks about Joe Biden's sexual assault accusations. So again, all right, here is where I would say that you're counter the majority black decision in this aspect is because it's like that That's how Joe Biden is winning anything in this election right now, is the black vote. And you're sitting there saying, no, let's be as critical. If we're going to mute R. Kelly, let's mute fucking Joe Biden as well. That's what it seems like you're trying to kind of point to. What is where do you come from a place when you talk about something like this specific issue?
So here's my thing with that. We have this thing to where when black folks do something wrong, we, black people, we are the first and the worst when the crucifixion comes.
Okay.
We just are. We will take the way that, anybody of color that is shown to be doing something wrong, something that they shouldn't have done, made a mistake, whatever you want to call it, just the worst of the worst, whatever it is. We will say, hold on, world. Let us beat them first. Let us crucify them first. Let us string them up, tar, feather, burn at the stake. We are going to go all, we don't leave nothing left for anybody else to do anything else to them after that comes our way. Anytime we see any person of color and that has prominence, has popularity, wealth, or anything, we are the first to tear them down and the worst at doing it. We have no mercy whatsoever. Now, even if there's some culpability to it, to where we knew what it was and what was going on and didn't do anything to try to stop it, didn't do anything about it, but once the rest of the world say something about it, then we take over the reins and commence to beating, muting, canceling, and doing whatever. If that's the wrath of the black community, if that's our wrath, if we're going to be the punishers, if you will, of society, then how come we didn't be outraged when it was Epstein? How come we weren't as out? Where were the mute Epstein posts? Where was the mute Weinsteins? Where was the mute Joe Biden? In that in that same logical train of thought that we would have, we would just be as upset with Joe Biden as we are with R. Kelly, as we were with Michael Jackson, as we were with Bill Cosby. We would be just as infuriated, but we're not, because it's not the agenda of the Democrats or the far left. It's just not, because it's not a hot topic for them. And I guess I would end it with I would end this thing with saying this about this particular topic. I think that there has to be a point to where, and this is just across the board, you have to take what applies to you and let the rest of it be what it is. There is conflict in Christianity in me, but I understand that I believe that there is a higher power. I believe that there is a God. I also believe that the energy of our ancestors is still around us and is ever present. I believe that. It's not taught to me. It's not taught to me in the Bible. So, right, it's not taught to me in the Bible, but I believe that. I would say probably my foundation, however, is based on Christianity, but it is not confined me to just that. I do believe in other things, but I believe in this thing more so than any other. So I wouldn't say that, yes, I'm a Christian. I wouldn't say that. But I do believe in God. I do go to a Christian church. I do. But I also have the ideas and thoughts of other things that I do acknowledge and believe in. So it's like there's that thing that I would say that's how people should approach life, period. Whatever it is that you are going through, whatever you feel applies to you best in life, as long as you ain't hurting nobody else with your decisions, physically or mentally, then why not explore that and see what it is and what works for you and what doesn't? It's like what the old my boy Tommy says this all the time. He says his grandmama taught him to say, eat the meat and spit out the bone. That part that you don't like, let it be. But that don't mean that you have to condemn anybody else that may like eating the bone. You can't do that. It's like, so have the discernment to say, well, hey, I'm going to take what applies best to me in my life and my own mental health and my spirituality and what makes me, a strong, rooted person in what I believe in. I'm going to take those things and nurture that, as opposed to trying to control what everybody else should do, shouldn't do, should be, shouldn't be. And when it comes to those specific laws and it comes to those specific rules, acknowledge those and go by those. If this is the law and there's nothing to contradict that law, let it be what it is.
I'm not mad at it, man. Like I said, again, that's one of the things I admire about you so much is that, like, you can tell me something and it makes me critically think. And that's what I think that people will get out of the relationship rehab. And I'm going to say UGA, the United Guns of America. So let's to wrap up. So I got one more question, which is, well, it's a few more questions, but not like too deep. First off, where people can find you?
You can find me on YouTube at The Relationship Rehab. And you can also find me on YouTube at United Guns of America. You can find me on Facebook at The Relationship Rehab. You can find me on Twitter at Relate Better. And you can find me on Instagram at The Relationship Rehab. The Relationship Rehab. That's where you can find me. Yes, sir.
Awesome. Make sure that you guys go check out The Relationship Rehab. You just started back doing your shows recently. I think it was about 2 weeks, right?
I've been going since then. I was on a hiatus back when I first moved here because I didn't have all my equipment and stuff. But that was back in 2018. Yeah, but I've been
something like that. Yeah, I thought I remember you. I knew that you was going off and on.
Yeah, I did have to take off the time because when we moved from Michigan to Texas, my equipment was up there, and then we had to get here, and then I had to get settled in here, and then I had to go back and get my equipment and stuff. But ever since then, I've been going. I do at least one show a week, easy. Yep.
Awesome. And when can people catch that show?
Usually I do a show Monday, Wednesdays, and usually Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. However, if you subscribe to my channel, both United Guns of America, and subscribe to The Relationship Rehab on YouTube, you will also get those notifications whenever I go live, because when I get certain stories or when I get certain topics or certain things happen, like with Joe Biden, I didn't even expect to do that show, but it came up and I was like, oh, wait, I got to do it. You know what I'm saying? So it was like, that's how that happened. So whenever that comes about, I do a show. The best thing to do is just to be subscribed to the channel, and you'll get the notification to when I go live, because 95% of my shows are live. And then even when I upload something, you'll get the notification there too, because everybody can't always watch it, because during the week, usually I do a late show. On the weekends, for the most part, I do late shows, but it's just how I am. But for the most part, that's when I'm usually on. And some people at work, some people sleep because they work third shift or something like that and just can't do it. But get the notifications. Best thing to do is subscribe, and that way you can go back and watch the show either way. And if you do go to my channels, please leave me a comment and tell me what you think, good, bad, or indifferent. It doesn't matter. I love to get feedback from other people on what my opinions are, what my thoughts are, how my content look. That, hey, you look ugly. Hey, you look good. Hey, I hate what you said. Hey, I hate you. Tell me. I want to hear it. I want all the feedback I can possibly get. I just want it. So definitely do that.
Make sure you go at the. Yeah, and make sure you go at the very beginning of his shows, because at the very beginning of the shows, he always is singing a song or like beatboxing. He always coming out with some songs, right?
Yes, indeed.
So I would say that like you hear the song every time, homie. And like, I ain't gonna lie, sometimes I kind of like I want to copy your style sometimes, and I want to start my podcast like just always like Anthony Hamilton, like I can't stay away from you too long. It's like
I really just like having fun that way, because it gives me it gives a little entertainment piece in the beginning. It's something different, but it also just gives me time for people to come in from the notifications and stuff. Yeah, I just like it, and I pick stuff at random, depending on how I'm feeling. I might be listening to a song all day. Sometimes people will like send me something and say, hey, can you sing this song? And I do it. But for the most part, man, I just really just like, man, what am I feeling like doing today? And I'll just do something. Yeah. So I started doing this other thing too, a couple of shows too. I'm doing like a little freestyle or something at the beginning. But for the most part, I just like singing. So that's why I sang. Yep.
Yeah, I dig it. Every time I listen, like I watch the show, it's like, man, this man done bust out with a whole song. Like, whole song. Well, the song don't even have nothing to do with the show, and I dig it.
Sometimes if I can, I will, but for the most part, no, man. This is just my time to do my thing. So, yeah.
Now, the final thing is this. I consider my shows not episodes. I call them challenges. And the reason why I call them challenges is because of the fact that what I'm trying to do is make myself be able to interview people who are, I believe, are constantly making history, which, by the way, I think that you're making history. But I call myself challenging because of the fact that it's me going out to actually interview and try to put somebody out there that nobody necessarily will consider a high regard history person, maker, I guess you would say. So, again, I think that you make history, and I think you're challenging me to think critically, even about my own personal beliefs. And I think that like you can never limit your critical thinking. And I think that I give that to you. Now, here is what I've been doing lately. I am also challenging you to give me more people to interview. So who will be some of the people that you recommend that I interview and I talk to?
I would say, you know what? I got somebody that I think it would be. There's another YouTuber. His name is DJ Just J. He's would be a good interview. And you can also interview who I consider to be one of the people that inspired and influenced me tremendously, heavily, is Tommy Sotomayor. You can email him and reach out to him to see if he would mind, doing an interview. He's a pretty big YouTuber, one of the most controversial YouTubers of all time, and but he definitely has influenced me in what I do, inspired me to do what I do. But I would definitely say Tommy Sotomayor would definitely be a huge challenge to actually be able to get an opportunity to interview him. Yep.
Make sure you try to help me get in contact with those people. I would love to be able to challenge myself and do that.
Emails and just like I said, just ask them, tell them what you do, and tell them that you would just like to interview them and see what happens.
Yeah, I definitely would do that, man. I really appreciate that. Now, again, Brian, Mr. Jefe, Jafar Redmond. I promise you are making history and you're changing. I wouldn't say changing. I would say that you're making people think critically on everything that they're doing. And I appreciate how you call yourself the relationship rehab, because of the fact that you are making people rethink, relive, and just reignite their relationship, not only with themselves, but the actual society around them. And I'm glad that you are on YouTube and you're constantly doing your shows.
I appreciate you, man. And I it is very humbling to just have somebody like you speak of me in such high regard. I appreciate it. It was.
I love you, baby. I love you.
Like I said, definitely a great podcast. I enjoyed myself, and just like I said, I'm glad that you can see what it is I do. You can like it. You can agree with it. You can disagree with it, because that's what it's there for. Like I always tell everybody, everything that I try to do, I hope that it helps somebody become a better version of themselves. And that's pretty much why I do what it is that I do. That's the intent behind it. That's what it is that I'm trying to drive, whether I'm doing it offensively or not. I want you to be better. That's my challenge to myself every day. what is it that I'm doing, the way that I'm doing it, how I'm doing it. Is it making someone become a better version of themselves? So that's what it is for me. And like I said, I appreciate the fact that you have acknowledged me and took time out to even want to interview me. That's quite humbling in itself. But if you ever need something, man, you ever want to do another interview, whatever, let me know. I challenge you also to get your video up and going and get yourself on YouTube and do your thing from there too, man. That would be something I think would be great, man. But just doing this interviewing thing and talking to different people, man, you're definitely making history yourself, sir. So salute to you and congratulations, man.
I appreciate it, man.
All
Thanks
right,
a
man.
lot,
You have
buddy.
a good one, dude. Yep.
You too, buddy.
Alrighty.
Take it easy.
Bye.
All right, bye. All right, guys, you're listening live to the Making History Making podcast. My name is History Williams. I am so excited. I got to interview Mr. Brian Redmond. I can't do no more podcasts after that. Like, this was a great experience. My name is History Williams, and I hope that you guys enjoyed the time. Make sure that you like, subscribe, all those great things. Peace. Woo-hoo! Look at you. You just went through a cultural experience and looking for more or simply just closure. Now, if you want to challenge me to interview someone you know that is making history, email me in the link in the description. Also, if you're looking for more of Making History Making podcasts, then remember that you can find it on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Luminary, iHeartRadio, and more. You can also find more content by History Williams on A Narrative Media Facebook page and YouTube. These pages includes events, tutorials, and even a gaming stream. Speaking of gaming, if you are a blurred, nerd, Latin nerd, or simply a gamer, you can check out Talk a Big Game on Twitch under History W. That is capital H, lowercase I, lowercase s, capital S, TORY, capital W. Or the Facebook page, A Narrative Media. Also, don't forget to check out the merchandise in the links in the description. We have various types of merchandise to choose from and show your support for History Williams and A&M. This includes bags and apparel on Redbubble, more colors for your t-shirts. You find those on TeePublic. Or if you're a coffee drinker, grab a bag of the biggest roast coffee from Custom Label Coffee. When you buy a bag of Custom Label Coffee, make sure you use the promo code SLOTHGAMING to get 10% off. Finally, for the closure, it would be cliche to say follow, like, subscribe, and share. But that is not completely why I am doing this. And that is not the brand that I want to build with A&M. I want to earn those things from you. My goal and dream is to provide you as the listener or viewer a cultural experience that is not only entertaining, but informative as well. My final goal is to make you feel as though you have a community every time you listen to this show. So when you hit that follow, subscribe, share, or like button, just know that you are part of the history makers and narrators that strive to grow and build a better connected future for all of us. So know that every time you hit those buttons, you're challenging yourself and me to keep making history. You folks stay awesome and keep making history so that you too will be on this podcast.